Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for episode 15 of Cage Side Convos. Coming to you live as always from American Top Team here in Watertown. I am Rick.
Hey, what's up? This is Quince.
So this week we're going to talk a little bit about understanding selfishness. And so kind of in thinking on this topic, something resonated with me this morning, even driving into the gym. So it's pretty snowy out, the roads are pretty shitty, and as such, I drove a little more slowly because I wanted to make it here. Okay?
Sure.
So I'm driving. I'm taking the time to think a little bit about what we're going to talk about today and everything. And at one point, I'm on 81. Speed limit's 65. Typically, I drive 75. Today, I was going about 40 in one spot.
Right.
Tires are kind of bald on the car, so I'm really taking my time. And I look up in my rearview mirror and I see there's probably like 25 cars just lined up behind me, and the dude right behind me is right on my ass, and I can tell people are getting pretty antsy to get to where they're going.
Right.
So I think this will resonate with most people. I started pressing a little harder on the gas pedal. I started feeling a little anxious because I was going a little faster and I was really comfortable with. I could feel the car start pulling a little bit and stuff, and then it really clicked with me right then that I needed to slow my ass down, or else I was going to end up driving off the side of the road.
Right.
And what was kind of cool about that situation is it really was kind of reminiscent of what we were, or what I wanted to talk about this week, is that it feels selfish to be at the line of, the front of 20 cars driving down the interstate, and you know that people are waiting on you, and it feels selfish to go slow and to kind of take care of yourself because you know that they have to go slow because of what you're doing. But I don't think it's healthy or beneficial to drive at an unsafe speed just to appease other people.
Right.
And I think that metaphor pretty directly translates over into life. I can't operate my life at a speed I'm not comfortable with, or a speed that I feel like is going to be catastrophic for me, just to make other people happy, just so other people can get to where they're going. Right? I can't make that sacrifice and put myself at risk.
Right.
And that really ties in with, I think, how a lot of us define selfishness internally, right? We think that anytime we take time to ourselves, if somehow it might negatively affect somebody, we feel that we're being selfish, right? And then the problem there is that if we are truly negatively affecting people, if we're hurting people, right, in the name of doing whatever the hell we want, then it's a problem. But if what we're doing is actually taking care of ourselves, and it's actually making us better, moving us forward, getting to our destination safely, right, then it's not necessarily selfish, right? It might be better defined as maybe self-care,
Right.
or something to that effect,
Absolutely. And I do think that metaphor and imagery lays it out perfectly. As far as the risks involved, and balancing the thought of self versus the thought of others.
Sure.
So, in that sense, understanding that for yourself is the most important. I've gone through a lot of, just as far as, what selfishness means to me. I've gone through a lot of changes. I was just talking to Rick about a book I read years and years ago that I've been hung up on and very beside myself. And it was a book by, a group of essays by Ayn Rand called The Virtue of Selfishness. And basically she was saying that, we're stuck. Our society is stuck in this altruistic state where we are to give to others, which is good. And, when we take that time for ourselves, that's frowned upon as something negative. I try and stay open-minded. I was trying to stay open-minded while reading it. But she was saying that, she was saying stuff like, if you give more of yourself than you have and do for others, this is caused by a lack of self-esteem. To do for others and not lack of self-esteem. I'm like, man, that's a really harsh way of looking at it.
Sure.
You know? And, you know, she says, you know, she would give examples like, you know, if you saw someone drowning in the lake and you jump in and, you know, to try and save them and hold their life over yours, that's due to the fact that you have a low self-esteem. And as harsh as it sounds, you know, I understand it better now, because I think maybe if you see someone drowning, and say if you're a solid swimmer, or if you have the tools and the skills to, you know, to rescue or something like that, you know, it's, you know, I can see, you know what I mean?
Right.
But, you know, it's tough, because if you don't define it for yourself, and where you, and kind of where you stand at about it. So I guess bringing it back, it wasn't until I would come into situations where I found myself in positions in which I could give back, and work within the community and things like that, you know, and give myself and give my time and give my energy. But I noticed that it started to take a toll, you know, started to take a large toll, because I got so involved with, you know, trying to connect and work within the community that I wasn't giving that same time and energy toward myself and my art and my goals, which are the same things that led me to that position, right, in order to be able to give back in the first place.
There's I'm starting to get really excited now. I'm sure you can see that.
Yeah,
like,
writing
kind
a
of
couple
jumping
things
like
down.
a little kid. Yeah, no, man, there's so much to this, and I'm kind of glad that we took a few minutes to chat about that a little bit earlier, because even hearing you run through it in a slightly different context now,
right,
it's kind of helped me understand it. I think that so she said society's altruistic, right? Now, I don't know how much I believe that society as a whole is always altruistic. I think that it's in people's nature to want to be altruistic and want to give back. I think what happens, and maybe what caused her jaded mindset, was that she felt that society was forcing you to be altruistic, right, under pangs of guilt. Right. So if you don't do for other people, you're a piece of shit.
Right.
And so that really, I think the lack of self-esteem, it really leads back to what is your motivation to do for others? Mm-hmm. What is your motivation to be selfless as opposed to selfish, right? You gave the metaphor of, you talked about if you saw someone drowning in the lake. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, what's your motivation to save them? Is it because you want that person to live, or because you're going to feel guilty if they die?
Right.
And I think that changes it, right? So if you do it because, oh my God, I can't live with the fact that they died, right? Then it's a selfish altruism. It's a faux altruism. It's not real, mm-hmm, right? And that, I think, kind of even weaves into the Stoic understanding of, you know, we talked about the metaphor of the archer, right? If you do your best beforehand, then the result doesn't matter. So if you do everything in your power to save that person's life and they still die, are you going to be able to live with yourself? And that's the self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, if you said you're not a strong swimmer, if you go in that water and try to save that person, you're both going to die. Right. So you don't, right? And you understand that, you know, maybe you call for help, maybe you try to find a rope to throw them, maybe you take other measures and do everything you can, right, without dying to save that person, right? Can you live with yourself if you do your best? Mm-hmm. If the answer to that is yes, then I think that shows that you have a healthy amount of self-esteem, mm-hmm, and you're confident with yourself, right? And you've come to peace with understanding your capabilities, and you don't define that as being selfish, because you know that's everything in your power. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, if you say, well, I have to get in there and save that person, and I don't care if I die because, right, I can't live with the guilt of them dying, then that's that kind of selfish altruism, because what's driving you to save them is your inability to cope with the guilt, mm-hmm, your lack of confidence in yourself, and lack of confidence in your abilities, right? And lacking that kind of inner peace. Mm-hmm. So I think somewhere in that word jumble I just spewed out, that's kind of how I'm starting to make sense of the lack of self-esteem in the
I like that phrase, selfish altruism.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And yeah, I definitely think it's very motive driven.
Right.
And we kind of talked about again, one of the Stoic tenets that's really been resonating with me since you and I started studying it a couple months ago is that notion of doing good for the sake of doing good.
Right.
Because you know that it is the just and right thing to do, and you know, what's the reward for doing good, right? If you have to attach a reward to it, right? So even in this notion, in that kind of more seemingly jaded, like Ayn Rand version of it, if your reward for doing good is to not feel guilty, that's selfish, right? If you actively do good to seek a reward, that's selfishness.
Right.
And we can understand the notion of not feeling guilty as a reward.
Yeah.
Right? But if you do something and you think, okay, well, if nobody knows about this, if nobody ever finds out about what I did, I'm completely happy because I know that I satisfied the criteria of just doing good.
Right.
Because that's what I feel compelled to be as a person.
Sure.
Right? Yeah, so I think a lot of it is ultimately motive driven.
Yeah, because at first glance, you know, the things that we talk about that derive from Stoicism and the virtues of selfishness seem to contradict themselves.
Yeah.
You know, they really do.
Yeah.
Until it's broken down like that, as you know, as far as the selfish altruism or you know, reward-driven purpose.
Right. Yeah, and that's why, I mean, every week, every time we pick a topic to talk about, one of the things that we always do is define it.
Right.
And look at what it means, because I really think context matters. You know, and selfishness is just the same, you know, because I think that context matters.
Sure.
And you touched on that topic of when you found yourself in a position to give back, you started giving back, and then you realized it was taking a toll on you.
Sure.
Right? And if you just give and give and give and give and give, and you never take care of yourself, eventually you're not going to be able to give anymore.
Right.
So we kind of touched on the, you know, again, I guess the car metaphors in my thing right now. But it's a notion of you using your car to give people rides, right? And every, you know, if I can, I'll give somebody a ride, sure. But not taking care of yourself, right, is the same as not taking care of your car. If your car, well, I mean, I guess this is kind of ironic that I say this, but if your car doesn't have good tires, right? If your engine doesn't run, if your battery's dead, if your windshield wipers don't work, you know, all these myriad different things that can go wrong with your car. If you don't attend to that because it's selfish, right? It's not selfish to take care of your car, it's a necessity.
Right.
Especially, you know, if you're using your vehicle to help others, right? So, and that's a perfect metaphor for our, not only for our bodies, but for our minds, for our psyche, for, you know, for our spirit as well. Is if we don't take the time to take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to help other people.
Right.
And you have to understand when it's time to do that. Right? Every 3,000 miles, you're supposed to change the oil on your car, or 5,000 or 6,000, whatever the hell you get around to, right?
Sure.
But eventually you got to do
Google it.
Yeah. Right? That might have been a little from personal experience. Oh shit, I should probably do this. But I think that's, I mean, I think for us, that's how it happens sometimes too, is we forget to do regular maintenance on ourselves.
Right.
You know, and then eventually, like you said, you realize you're at a point where it's taking a toll on you.
Sure.
And then I know when I first started really realizing things like that, when I was giving too much, when I was getting burnt out, when I first started practicing saying no to people, I felt like shit. I felt really guilty. I felt very selfish. Until I really started understanding, so we talk about like rest is work, right? So saying no is work, giving ourselves time to recover and be the best that we can possibly be. Because would you rather be able to give 100% to everybody that you help, or try to help everybody and only give people 50%? You know, so again, it's understanding the context of selfishness. Is it really selfish to say no, or are you giving too much? You know, and setting that healthy.
I think it was. It reminds me of maybe Steve Jobs. There was a quote by him who was saying, you know, the number one characteristic of successful people is the ability to say no. He's like, I say no 95% of the time throughout my whole day, because it's. Do you want to give a piece of your energy and time to this and this and this and this and this and not be able to give your whole self?
Right.
Or do you want to really focus on your purpose?
Right.
And you know, the things that kind of drive you, or the goals that you have set for yourself and where you want to be, and give everything toward that.
Right.
You know, so
and
he did pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so. One thing so how I try to practice this in my life is Sundays I won't do private training sessions with people. And I don't know, it's been a little over a year since I've really started holding myself to that. Every once in a great while, like I'll come in and do a training session on a Sunday here or there, but it's so few and far between because I've made myself hold myself accountable for having that day off.
Right.
You know, taking that one day a week to just be able to do whatever I want. And what sucks is I have a lot of people who only have Sundays that they can come in and train. You know, not everybody's schedule lines up with mine, and I've had a lot of people get in touch with me about training on Sundays or something, and saying no, it's still like there's still a little part of me that always, you know, kind of stings a little bit when I say no.
Right.
But I have to understand, even though it might feel like it's selfish, I made that agreement to myself that it's important to have that day off. It's important to take that time away to rest physically, mentally, whatever. Because I know if I do that, then I can be better the rest of the week, you know, for a vast majority of the people. But it's, I mean, exactly like you're talking about, you know, it's difficult to learn to say that sometimes.
Yeah, you know, I remember when at times it was most apparent back when, so I've taken, you know, I don't throw as many shows as I used to, but I used to throw a bunch of shows, and, you know, of course people would always hit me up. Artists would hit me up, and they see it going on. They want to be a part of it, which is awesome, which is great, always. And they want to come on and perform, you know, and sometimes these artists aren't, you don't necessarily see them out in the crowd. You know, they just hear about it, or they see the videos or the clips. So, and they want to be a part of that. I get it. I understand. And at first, you know, I wanted everybody to be involved. And so I would try and fit as many people in to the show as possible. And I would see that not everybody was as prepared. Or maybe not everyone, you know, held themselves to, you know, a certain standard out in public, or represented themselves in a way that maybe I wanted, you know, I was hoping that I would represent myself. And getting them into the show, and whether it was, you know, their preparedness level, or, you know, how they held themselves, it wasn't a good match for the show. And it would throw the whole vibe of the show off. And the show is certainly not just for me. It's not just for that artist. You know, it's for everyone involved. The people that put the work and time, the one running sounds, the people that, if they're paying money to get into, you know, catch the event. I mean, this is for a lot of people. The businesses that might have put money in, you know, to have themselves represented. But saying yes to everybody, I saw that it brought down the whole vibe. It could bring down the whole vibe of the situation. So I had to start saying no a lot more often. And you know, I wouldn't just say no. I would try and let people know. I said, not yet. You know, I would like to see this from you. I'd like to see you out more, supporting more. You know, I'd like to see you working on your craft a little bit more. I'd like to see you, depending on the show, you know, maybe changing your approach given the audience. You know, things like that. So it's not just a straight up no. You know, I was trying to still give at the same time as I was saying no, but
kind of encourage them to grow.
You know, as everyone else was growing at the same time. But, you know, it is difficult because people are going to take offense to that because they might not have the same vision. And
so that's, so it's interesting to me because there's a lot going on, and even in that, if we explore it through the lens of selfishness, right? So your fear of appearing selfish, or thinking that you're selfish or whatever, caused the quality of the shows to drop, right? So you knew you had to rectify that. What also caused the quality of the shows to drop was their reluctance to not be selfish. Right? When you perform like that, when you refuse, especially when you're involved in a group project like that, you know, essentially as it is, you know, you have numerous artists, everybody's responsible to perform well if they want the group to grow. But if they only give a shit about themselves, they're going to perform poorly, they're going to act poorly, they're going to prepare poorly, right? And that's very selfish.
Right.
Because they only care about how their little set goes. They don't see the overall picture, and they don't care to give back. And if you want to grow that community vibe, right? If you want to have longevity in your shows, you have to think big picture. You have to, yes, you want to grow as an artist yourself, but you also have to keep the big picture in mind, because this has to be recurring.
Right.
Anybody that has a longevity mindset knows that it's not just one performance that's going to make you. It's continual quality performances. So their unwillingness or their desire to remain selfish caused you to have to start to learn to act a little more what appeared to be selfishly, but really it ended up being for the greater good
of the larger. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So just kind of really interesting how many different ways we can view even in that small little subject, just
perception of selfishness.
Yes, exactly.
It's wild.
Thank you for cleaning that up as I ramble.
No, that's fine. You do the same for me. So that's awesome, man. Passion versus purpose. Is that what you just mumbled? Because I was just looking at the same thing. Yeah.
Again, another little, kind of micro thing that popped up in that I think resonates throughout all of this is we talk a lot about purpose, and most of the time when somebody finds a purpose that is fulfilling, it involves giving back. So it involves being selfless, but it also involves the use of their passion.
Right.
And one of the ways I've heard passion and purpose defined is that passion is for us, purpose is for others.
Right.
So if our passion is for us, and we want to use our passion to find a fulfilling purpose, that means we have to be selfish, right? Because passion is strictly for us. We have to find something we love doing.
Right.
We have to find something we're good at. We have to find something we want to put the time into getting better at. Because if I just say, me specifically, if I just say, I'm passionate about Muay Thai, I'm passionate about doing Bang Muay Thai and teaching it. If I say I'm passionate about that and I want that to be my purpose is spreading that art, and then I don't put any time into learning it, I don't put any time into drilling, into practicing, into shadow boxing, into bag work, and watching videos and studying and doing seminars, if I don't put that time into that, into enriching myself, into making myself better, then when I go to teach it, I'm going to be shit. My purpose is going to have no substance. I'm not going to be able to give anything back. I'm going to be driving a jalopy that won't start. I can't do shit for anybody. So it's important to know when to be selfish, right? Air quotes around that for anybody that's not watching and just listening, is because is it really being selfish, or are you bettering yourself? And that comes back to the notion of self-care, right? If somebody's having a rough day and you say, go take some time for yourself, think about it, meditate, go to the spa, go to the beach, go relax, go take a nap, right? Take care of yourself. Self-care is important, right? We'll tell everybody all the time, self-care is important. But when we do it, it's selfish, right? If I say, well, I'm gonna go take a nap, that's selfish.
Right.
Fuck that, man. I need to rest. I need to study. I need to train. I need this because I want to be better long term, so I can give back.
Yeah.
So understanding that maybe it's not always selfish to take that time away to yourself.
Sure. And it's kind of the chicken or the egg, which came first. Passion or purpose. And I guess just speaking for myself, I don't think that I set out to, put on the community or put together the work within the community. I didn't set out for that. I set out to find what I was passionate about, what really gave me that lust for life, I guess, and what helped me to become better, on a daily basis. And I think once I found that, the purpose started to, it's like when you're shining something, when you're brushing the dirt off something, you start to see the form behind it. Sure. That's kind of what it was, and it almost became like, once you have this passion or platform, or reach, the purpose almost becomes almost like a sense of responsibility. And I don't think it can work the other way first. I mean, you can do good to do good, just because other people might say you know, you should do this. This is good for, you know, this is good for the community. But like, how long will you be doing it? You know, just it's like working a job for the money. If you're not really there for the money, how long is it going to keep your attention before you start drifting off and just not being true to yourself?
So kind of motive driven.
Motive driven.
Again, bringing
Yes.
back that kind
Yes.
of notion. Yeah.
But now if I'm doing something that I love, that's giving me life every single day, and I'm using that same intention or practice or mindset and sharing that with the community, and that's what becomes the purpose.
Right.
Because that doesn't take anything from me, because I'm giving to myself, and through self, you know, I can give further.
Yeah.
And it's continual, and it's that whole longevity mindset that you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, man. That's a, you know, are we doing it because other people think we should, or are we doing it because we know that's what's going to drive us?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, if you, you know, the motive of it, if you do something just because you're worried about external responses or external stimulus, then it's going to be short-lived,
mm-hmm.
and it's not going to be purposeful. It's again, it's that kind of that selfish altruism, that faux altruism. You know, I'm doing it, and yes, it's a good thing, but I'm doing it to satisfy somebody else. I'm doing it for the reward, and maybe it's the reward of, you know, somebody's getting off my back about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the reward of, you know, I made that person happy, which, yes, if you look at it, altruism is inherently impossible because there's no such thing as complete and true selflessness. There's always going to be some sort of feeling of internal gratitude, you know, but is it, you know, again, I like to think about it in the context of, if nobody ever knows that I did this, will I be good with the fact that I did it?
Yeah.
You know?
I think you had a great quote before we even started, when we were chatting before. You said, the eyes don't seek reward for seeing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, that's spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah, that's right from Marcus Aurelius.
Was it?
Yeah, he talks about that. And I think he, you know, he's a few other body parts like the legs don't seek reward for walking and stuff like that. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's our duty. It's our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's what we're here for. Is, I feel, is to do good.
Sure.
You know, and you have to do it without any sense of reward. You know, any sense of external reward. You know.
External, right?
External.
Yeah, I'm glad you broke that up.
And so, the internal reward, like I said, you get into the paradox of altruism, in that nothing's inherently altruistic, because even if you just have the internal reward of I did the right thing, and that makes you happy, but that has to be enough. You have to, you know, seek your own applause. Again, you know, a little Stoic throwback. But knowing that you can be happy and content with what you've provided the world, because that's all that matters is how you feel about it inside. Now, linking that back into selfishness is you have to make sure that you can provide the absolute best to the world. Right. You have to hold yourself to that standard, you know, and that's where discipline is huge. Mm-hmm. It's because I like to define discipline as the agreement with yourself to achieve your goals, right? The agreement with yourself to do better, right? And in order to do better, sometimes we have to take that time to build ourselves, you know, and it takes a long time. It's a lot of trial and error, learning when to say no, learning how to say no. And we're gonna make mistakes. Like I've definitely said no before and realized afterwards, like, that was me. I just said no because I wanted to stay home and I didn't want to put in the effort. Right. Well, that's kind of fucked up, and that is selfish, you know. But you have to make that mistake to understand where to draw the line. You know, you start out being too selfish, then you go to being too selfless, then you come back to being a little too selfish, then you give a little too much. You just constantly play that back and forth over time, hoping to kind of strike that middle ground.
Right.
You know, and learning the difference the whole time.
Sure.
You know.
Right. Yeah. You know, I think essentially, given the fact that we're here and we're talking about understanding selfishness, you know, it is going to be defined differently throughout each individual. You know, there are certain core, just like, you know, everything else, there are certain core values or ideas that I think will be shared. But, you know, it is through that personal trial and error that you can really find your own footing, you know. we talk a lot about our own experiences, which help us find our footing, helps me find my footing in it, and better understand it. But other people, I think, will be able to find or come to similar conclusions, if they're honest with themselves and use their own stories and personal reflection in it.
Honest with themselves.
Yeah.
I think, and this is something that really bugs me a lot. But I think it's the honesty part is important because there's something that happens, and I've been struggling with finding the most succinct way to explain it. But essentially, using negative character traits as an acceptable excuse to be selfish. So the example right here that I really like to use is people who are chronically late. People who are late to every single thing that they do. You were almost on time. but when people are chronically late, and they say, "Oh man, sorry," they just say, "I'm just always late. I'm just always late to everything. That's what I do. That's who I am as a person." That's a negative character trait, because if it wasn't a negative character trait, they wouldn't feel the need to explain it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if we take a moment, we reflect on that, and we're honest with ourselves, and I do this exercise all the time. This is one thing that keeps me from being late, is because I know that if I define it in this way, if I say I'm late because I value my time more than I value the other person's time, that I think is a very selfish definition of it. Okay? And even this morning, even coming to class, I was laying in bed, I was super warm, I knew it was shitty outside, and I didn't want to get up, and I was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late because I was selfish and I took too much time sitting in my bed, So an exercise like that, and it might seem a little brutal, it might seem a little scathing, but I feel like it's honest. That's my honest definition of selfishness, and maybe that's just my truth, but.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I just hope no one from work is watching this. Because it sums it up right there, I
hope everyone's from work is watching this and they all show up on time tonight.
Oh, man. No, I do agree. And it is brutal, but that is, it's a good place to start.
Sure.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's hard to be honest with ourselves in that context.
Right.
And it's weird how we'll flip-flop around on our definition of what it is to be selfish. We'll give so much in one area, but if it requires like true sacrifice or true self-evaluation, maybe we'll be a little more forgiving in the definition of selfishness.
Sure.
Well, I'm always late. I'm always late. Like, hey, you're fucking always late because you're and
it's the defeatist attitude.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Like, I can't do anything about this.
Right. Which
is bullshit. It's hard to do something about it, and maybe it doesn't ever change. But if you're actively working on it, if you start trying, that's all anybody can ask for.
Right.
And yeah, like I said, I know it's maybe a little scathing, but I feel like sometimes that's a necessity of the situation.
Sure.
And if you evaluate it like that, and if you don't agree, then that's fine. If that doesn't match your definition of selfishness, that's fine. But I think it's an interesting point of self-exploration too.
Yeah.
Another one is people who just say whatever the hell they want all the time.
Right.
And they give you that excuse like, I'm just honest. Like, are you just honest? Are you so self-absorbed that you can't help to say whatever the hell? Yeah. Yep. You just gotta say whatever the hell's on your mind. Like, okay, all right.
Sure.
Maybe take a step back and do a little, self-evaluation and see, which I have actively done. I tend to be, I can have a propensity of being kind of a scathing individual sometimes and just popping off at the mouth, but understanding that as being selfish and unnecessary. If there's not something positive to be gained out of something I have to say, I try to make sure I refrain from saying it. And I don't succeed on that a lot. And it's definitely a point of progress. Something I actively try to work on is, all right, well, am I just saying this because I don't give a shit what that person feels about this? Or am I saying it because I feel like this person will benefit from what I have to say?
Sure.
And, try not to be selfish about it, self-absorbed. You know?
Right. Somebody else.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we knocked out all the bullet points that we had, and then some.
Yeah.
And then some.
Probably should have wrapped it up on a more positive note instead of letting me get up on my soapbox and ending it with a perfect example of what it is to be selfish. You all listen to how I feel about the world.
Oh man.
But yeah, I think kind of to wrap it up though, I think one of the big sweeping kind of concepts that I like to think of in selfishness is understanding how to set healthy boundaries. Learning to define selfishness between, is it selfish or is it taking care of ourselves? Is it self-betterment? Is it self-enrichment? Or are we truly just doing it because fuck everybody else?
Right.
I think it's certainly been an important exercise for me and a very key point for self-evaluation and I hope self-betterment. You know what I mean?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you end it.
That's awesome. Quince, man, as always, it's a great conversation. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah. Stay warm out there. We'll catch you next week.
Next week.